Make sure. Right.
And let me share that live stream. Do you want me to do that?
Yes, please, as I'll be doing that in 1 second.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, perfect. Welcome. We are live. Let's see. Here we go. So let me just share it.
Oh, there we are. Yeah.
There we are. Hello, Demetrius. I'm going to keep it here just in case if people have questions. And mhm. Okay. Okay, so I have to turn this up because I'm going to be hearing it on this end. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. We're going to welcome a few beautiful souls join us first. Okay, good. When you're ready, Geraldine.
I'm ready.
Wow, so welcoming our beautiful, beloved family of light to this Galactic Ascension Hour with Geraldine Orozco. Correct? Did I say that right? Oh, I love
Yeah,
the way that
perfect.
Orozco. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much, my dear sister, for taking this time and being with me in this hour as there's so much when I first learned about you, and it was through Alan Seinfeld. And did I say that right? I always get like the last name messed up. And I felt when I saw you speak, it was it was like we have got to talk because there's so much parallel between you and I. And of course,
Wow.
it is like many of us that have experienced that multidimensional, really our extraterrestrial beingness. We can't even call it extraterrestrial. I don't even relate to that, but for some of the individuals that would recognize it that way, and the experiences we have had, particularly being able to, you know, being on the light ships, being able to, and some people experience actual abductions while some other ones are taken so that the healings are taking place on their body. I was like, you have got to talk. You and I got so much to talk about with the experiences we have had. So I welcome you with all of my heart. And I really thank you for being here and everybody else that's going to benefit from here. So let me just see, is that the sound on my end or your end? Yep.
Let me know. What do you hear? I don't hear anything
Okay.
necessarily.
So I'm going to make sure it's not on my end. Let me just make sure I turn off the audio. I believe it's on my Facebook page. So let me just, if you would give me a second and everybody patient. Usually it doesn't come up, but I don't know why the sound is
It's not.
coming through on my end. And I
Yeah, I believe
actually,
it's on my Facebook
yeah,
page.
exactly.
Oh,
There. Now,
okay.
and it's, it's, okay, so this should be good to go now. I don't hear anything. Do you hear it?
I
Perfect.
don't hear it. Perfect.
Perfect. So thank you so much. So before we begin, of course, everybody always asks, what's your story and all of that. And people can learn about your magnificent story because you have so many videos on it that you actually share, what took place, that this chapter of your life literally blasted open and you've been in service to it so that we
Mhm.
can dive into the other areas. But on a very brief spectrum, if you like to share, what year was it that um, you experienced the opening with with the galactic family, but it was in your case it was like an abduction, and then everything
Mhm.
else that opened up after that.
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's such an honor, and I love your energy, and you're so loving and radiant. And I love that. I appreciate so much about your soul. Such a beautiful presence on this planet. And thank you to all the listeners and everyone that's here today. Well, my I've had my spiritual progression was a long one that probably started in 2007, 2008 when I had some traumatic things happen. My partner passed away at the time, and that really made me dive into the spiritual realm. And I think it was layers and layers that were being uncovered until I reached a pinnacle point in that state of awareness and meditation. And I had this experience, this contact, this abduction experience, per se, where I was taken out of my room in 2013 and introduced to a bunch of information about my lineage, my star lineage, and my hybrid children. I was introduced to them for the first time. Now, mind you, at this point, I had not crossed the topic of extraterrestrials or interdimensionals at that point. So it was really paradigm shattering to experience that at first hand. And moreover, as a result of that experience, the very next Monday, I had activated all of these psychic abilities where now I can see the multidimensional body. People look to me like these giant light orbs of colors, and I can feel to an incredible extent all of their emotions, what they're feeling, what they're thinking, and what's going on in their body too. So it took a moment to integrate that process. And it wasn't really until 2017 that I decided I was in a relationship prior to that where the worlds weren't merging, they weren't meshing. You know, this extraterrestrial interdimensional thing wasn't coming into the earth
Yeah.
plane, and I just couldn't live this kind of double life.
Yeah.
I couldn't ignore this part of me that was so big and I believe so important. So in 2017, I decided to get this hypnotherapy regression, and that's when everything just completely came out. And it was a magnification, really, of abilities, of awareness, of connection, of knowingness, and of incredible amounts of information that were downloaded at that time.
Oh yeah. So a couple of things. It's interesting. So as a child, you weren't one of the ones that experienced contact or being able to like I had experienced the ships. I had experienced meetings with me. I had so much experience as a child, and I'm literally visibly seeing them. And but I know many did, and then it shuts down for a while until you're ready. But I was seeing
Right.
codes and the languages from that like 5 6 years. That's I remember, and and I remember drawing the portals from where I came from, telling my parents I came through those holes. I kept drawing them on the living room wall, and they couldn't understand what I was saying. But I knew I wasn't from here. I kept waiting for my star family to take me, like just go sit outside waiting to take me. But any of those, did you like not have memory, or did you experience some of this till then later on?
Yeah. So when we're kids, you know, from birth to the age of 7, we're completely open. We're
Yeah.
completely open to our interdimensionality, and we have the ability to literally see and experience and translate what we're seeing into this human experience. So a lot of us experience tapping into this extraterrestrial interdimensional consciousness, which I believe it's our fragments, or it's a reflection of our own fragments that we're meeting. And so at early age, I had experienced several incredible experiences where I was in front of lights. I mean, at the age of 5 was the first memorable experience where a light came into my room and took me.
Yes.
But the thing is that because, you know, the way that I was raised with an extremely spiritual family,
Oh,
and you know and I was, you know, taught about so many different religions and so much culture and art and all these things about the world, that really helped form an image of things, but not necessarily going deeply into this extraterrestrial interdimensional explanation. So even though I had these kinds of experiences, there was something missing. There was a merge, and I think that it's an evolutionary process that we kind of experience collectively, you
totally.
know, which is really beautiful about now because we are now open. We're completely opening. It's like a quantum leap that we've experienced over the past 3 years, where this topic is present here. It's embodied, and more, I'm finding people wanting to connect, needing to have that level of information coming in, and it's holographic in a sense, you know.
I couldn't agree with you more. This is why I wanted you to come on, and this particular the Galactic Ascension. I'll think about it because there is so much misinformation. We know through media has done a tremendous job to just bring here to the most important part of a star seed. There's so many star seeds on this planet. And I always say in my talks, it's like we signed up as time release capsule to to allow the information, the inner information through that interterrestrial light stream to pop up, like literally the time release come off and the capsule come off so that we can start beaming the material that is contained within our DNA, within our coding, because each of us hold the key in unlocking the DNA. We don't have to go outside to do it. It's already within it, but it is through the light that opens it, and it is through the will to finally not deny any part of ourselves. And many of us that have had, for example, we're hybrids and we are many different star systems. We have memories of so many to start allowing the language to be spoken and from it and from the material shift so that way others can also stand up in the presence of it in its celebration, not and start shifting the consciousness that has done everything possible to diminish it, to fear, because we put fear so that people won't go investigate, right? So that way it becomes controlled and monitored. And this is why it's so important, I feel, at all times to start recognizing our galactic selves, our galactic family, and connect to the true nature of the light stream within the codings of it. So we can recognize what is pure frequency from that we're bringing onto the planet for the purpose of ascension and what is not. So I really appreciate these conversations. So those of us along all my talks, Geraldine, probably like you, I have had, I mean, years of public speaking. I've heard so many people that whenever we say what happened in children, they always said, well, I thought I imagined it, or they told me I imagined it. So it was never validated for them to embrace it and then start going deeper with it.
Hmm. Well, I have kind of a little unique perspective about this galactic interconnectedness that we have. I mean, when we incarnate into the physical body, we are meshing with a certain dimensional timeline, which is this three-dimensional plane. And so as this infinite consciousness that comes into the body, it becomes organized within this system called the chakra system. It's what we know as a chakra system. And each one of those chakra systems is a dimensional plane. And it goes all the way up into the higher realms, and it's an infinite. So I like to look at the human being as this enmeshed, interdimensional expression, really is what I believe the human is it's and what we have with that enmeshed system that's infinite, that reaches all the way up to the highest dimension. As we are moving through it collectively, our ability to activate our DNA allows us to have access to more of these dimensions, which are inherently, they're naturally a part of us. So when we come into the earth, the earth plane, which is this matrix system, which, well, we call it a matrix. It's such a little cliche word now, but what we really talk about is a holographic simulation, really, that we're kind of co-creating within the parameters of a structured reality that at the same time as deactivating certain parts of our DNA limit our perception and really controls our perception in order, and this is systematically done through education, through society, through religion, through our cultures, and through this constant ideology of separation from being one, whether it's races, sex, all these things that really cause compartmentalization. And so all of that causes such a deep separation with a whole, an idea of being a galactic self. And, so when we go through this awakening and we recognize that, there is this interdimensional ability, the way that we see it in mainstream media is through ghosts or paranormal or these ETs and extra terrestrials, which would mean that there's a physical plane and there's an extra terrestrial place. And so that really limits our ability to see beyond the fact that it's an interdimensional relationship that we're having with ourselves. So our ability to activate the DNA through our work, through our awareness, through our centeredness is what really activates the how we access that connection with all our fragments.
Right.
I believe that the human body is like this incredible network of consciousness, and we are fragmented on all these dimensions, which means that we have access to ranges of extraterrestrials. And as you know, we're in this polarity, we experience polarity. This dualistic existence that we live in allows us to experience ranges from very low vibrational extraterrestrial interdimensionals to very high vibrational interdimensionals. And I believe that we need to be aware of both sides because it's an expression of our own duality.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily believe that it's one or the other. I think that there's both. And so people will experience experiences based on their personal evolution, their personal cleansing of their DNA code and what they've experienced. So it's important to note that because some people they experience a disassociation because they experience really low stuff and they're like, wait a minute, I thought they were high.
Yeah.
And then there's other ones that experience really high and they're like, I can't relate with the low, which is great. But there is everything. There's everything, even within the races, even within reptilians or greys or all of these races. There's ranges of consciousness, just like me and you.
Yes, absolutely. And I really appreciate what you said because it is the consciousness on this plane right now is to go inward. There's lots of focus to go inward so you can experience the interdimensional plane, which already exists. Everything is already existed. We don't have to, there's no developing, there's no creating, there's not, it already is. To be able to access what is, when I experienced this, I experienced the plane going in all in geometric pattern. Everything is always geometric, and then it evolves in geometric pattern. So the consciousness then is communicated to me in geometry. When all many different spectrum of the star brothers and sisters that I communicate as a contactee, it's always the language is geometric. You literally, I experience it geometrically so then I can speak it and communicate it. And then there is that, like you said, that interdimensional awareness. How much is the awareness? And I feel the geometric pattern, whether it's how it's vibrating, how much it's spinning, how much is, let's say, glowing through its radiance of light. It also has that communication ability to the way the material is exchanged, the knowledge is exchanged. Like when I died 9 years ago, Geraldine, when I did cross over into it, because I know you've also had that experience. When I crossed over and I was taken through my different bodies until I met the Arcturian elders, the the Council of 12, there was none of this. It's just the consciousness. And their presence within the consciousness communicated. All communication was in geometric form. And it was so precise, so perfect, so pristine, so incredible in its wisdom, in its light, and it contained. And I remember when they brought my DNA in front of them, and they started readjusting it to the H strand so that it can have certain capabilities when I was sent back to Earth. So, and it's part of that decoding and other abilities that is already within all of us. For me, it just happened to be this one activated on that side before they send me back. Point
Totally.
being, point being is that there is that range of the many different beings. Like I have, I mean, this sometimes I do speak of this. I've met a, a, a leader of a draconian being, very, let's say, from our consciousness, a very brutal being. But I also recognize when I met it that that exchange that was done in the communication his purpose, all of them also have purpose. Unfortunately, many are so frightened the minute we say reptilian, the minute we say Draco, the minute we say Zeta, whatever, they get so frightened because, again, there's been also, I feel, a lot of misinformation. So I would love today for you to, as we go towards this first, the hybrid kingdom, and also around this topic, because there is discernment in recognizing, but what you are interacting is within you that is interacting. So, and I feel most individuals don't recognize that because then and they don't know what to do. And they're missing that, let's say, maneuvering and being able to have the proper communication, grounding the energy, and how to use this magnificent inner system. So, anything you'd like to share on that would be great before we
Hmm.
go into the hybrid children topic.
Yeah. So it's really important to note that what we experience, whether in this dimension or in another dimension, is a direct reflection to our resonance. And what is our resonance? Our resonance is the expression. It's a holographic, energetic expression of information that is informed by everything that we are, our belief systems, and all of that is what we're storing within the chakra system. The chakra system is a record. It's a holographic record that then is projected from your DNA code. Your DNA code is kind of like the base information that stores all of this information, your ability to connect with other dimensions, your prior experiences, your future experiences, because we tend to think that it's like a linear timeline, that we're on this linear timeline, but in reality what we look like is like these orbs of consciousness that have reference points in multiple aspects of ourselves. And in this current dimension, we're experiencing them within that dualistic, you know, um, I
Right.
guess
Yeah.
it's kind of like we have the positive and the negative aspect of all things, and so we get to experience those parts of it. But in reality, when we get to higher dimensions, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, within this current timeline, we're accessing a language and an expression of consciousness that will manifest itself in the best way that we can understand it. And so sound, color, vibration, frequency, and geometric form, which is, the linear expression of that, is kind of the next step language. This is kind of the how we can translate, information that is so expansive that the human mind really can't understand. So we begin to communicate telepathically through these forms of color, sound, geometric shapes. So our genetic code will store all parts of us that have been in touch with draconians or these arcturians or all of these parts of us which are ourselves. It's a reflection of ourselves. So just know that when you're experiencing something, it's a reflection of your own aspects of yourself. And in previous experiences with these draconians being on craft, and I think it has a lot to do with the hybrid as well, is that um, there is an exchange happening because we live in this dualistic expression, and that's something that's very important. And it really segues into the next topic because when our human body, when we are unaware of what we are, of our ability to tap into our consciousness as our creative power, our ability to manifest our experiences, and how that the mechanics of that functions, um, we are basically in rejection of what we are organically and naturally. And what that does is that it makes us a host to a lot of things that come in and make themselves at home into our space. And so what happens is a parasitic exchange, in other words, that takes from your life force energy because you're not aware, and because you're not aware, it's you're open game. So that's why awareness is so important when you're diving into these realms of interdimensional contact. And discernment is incredibly important, because if you are not aware of yourself, of your vibrational resonance, of why you're producing, manifesting these experiences, you're going to continue to have those low frequency experiences with draconians, with all these other things. There is a certain parasitic exchange within some of these beings, and that happens because we are not aware of our free will. Oftentimes we don't realize, we don't recognize the fact that we have the choice to choose whether we experience something, whether it's good or bad. So my advice for that to anybody that is going into this interdimensional contact, and I think it's not talked about enough, is that watch your resonance. You know, what are your core beliefs? What are your belief systems? What are you listening to? Are you, you know, is your idea of interdimensional beings based on TV and movies and film, where there's a very specific agenda behind that ideology, you know? So pull away from that and enter, you know, higher states of yourself through your own personal transformation.
Thank you so much for that. I 100% resonance with you. And in here in Washington, D.C., for 3 years, I ran a Star Seed group. And one of the things that I was called to assist them was how to be able to establishing this contact in the most sacred, safe, beautiful way, but allow the resonance, and a lot have to do with sound, to build that sound, and and have like literally this is like for me, this is the way I experience it, is like there are gateways and gateways and gateways and gateways. If the material, because I've put that call out, the material has to be of the purest light for me to interact with. So then when it hits a gateway, it has to go through certain gateways. And then when it's pure, then my frequency is able to start vibrating in the sound. So I was teaching them how to do that. And that way they were very safe. And then they can have, then they were not just, they were fully in charge what they were giving consent to and what have you. I remember like some of us also are bringing the knowledge and wisdom of some of our other star brothers and sisters that have not yet been known on the planet. So, of course, like, Arcturians, Syrians, Lyrans, Andromeda, these have been, they're common names now. Some of us, like, for example, I had, in one of my work, I met the beings, the violet beings called Meterians. Meterians that came in, their head was like almost like a crystal ball glass with edge like this, with these incredible spiky gold, sort of like garment was incredible, but pure, almost like amethyst crystal is the best word I can, but it wasn't even that all the way. And it was incredible when they showed me the children. Oh my goddess. Like, and I looked information. There was of course no information on Metarians, where they're coming from, what is this? And I wanted to know what was the contact. So they began communicating in the language, and somehow, interesting enough, I was able to communicate back. But they showed me their connection with Archangel Zakia, and their connection with Saint Germain. And the reason why now they're helping some of these hybrid children that are part of the full planetary ascension, these hybrid children. It was like incredible. Of course, like, and they wanted this information to come through. So that's why that's what was so exciting, that you have your knowledge and wisdom of the hybrid children and the purpose of it, because people still don't understand what this is. And Mm, and I want this to be an exchange of knowledge here for those listening.
For sure. So let's get into the hybrid topic. So what are the hybrids? So what hybrids are is a product of genetic modification of our DNA code. And what a hybrid is basically a combination, or what I call it, more like a cocktail of DNA that produces these kinds of hybrids. Now, what makes the hybrids interesting, and we'll talk about the process in just a minute, but is that again, as I mentioned earlier, when we activate certain parts of our genetic code, we have the ability. What that means is that you have the ability, you're activating your access to other dimensional timelines. So, this is what allows you to tap into information about any kind of ETs or, interdimensional beings that are within 12th dimension, 13th dimension, 14th, so on and so forth. There's infinite dimensions that we have access to. And so all of that is dependent on the activation of your DNA. And that's why there's such a direct connection with spiritual work, spiritual awakening. And moreover, it's deprogramming of limiting beliefs and fear-based programs that limit your ability to surrender and to release into this multidimensional aspect of yourself. So what hybrids are is that they and this through my experience, we've actually, since the conception of time, living on this planet, have experienced the hybridization program. The combination of this human-based genetic code combined with these interdimensionals, whether they were the Anunnakis or some of these, Draconians, these original lineages that came into the earth at that time in order to manifest this human race in this dimensional timeline. And so what's interesting about that is that when I traced back this origin in one of my hypnosis regressions, I was taken back to Mesopotamia around BC 31. And when I went there, there were these beings that were the Anunnakis. And what they were doing was that they were preserving this incredible gold sun-like substance that is an accumulation of soul essence, soul essence. And so they were masters of what we know as alchemy, which is the transmutation of life force energy from death energy into life, creative life force energy, and utilizing that to create life. So this was like a source of energy, a source of life for them. And the interesting thing is that as they created some of these hybrids or a product of that different species, it developed and manifested into certain preserved bloodlines that have gone through history, through, mostly royal lineages or heavily preserved lineages of people in power that were preserving that life force energy. And it's they are the ones that managed, the political things, the structures of our reality, the financial institutions, all of these things that trickle down until you see our presidency. Okay, so there's many of the U.S. presidents were, genetically related to one another, and these bloodlines. I mean, going all the way to the royal families, all these main families that are in control. So my question was, why were some of these bloodlines so heavily preserved, and what's the difference? Like, are they special? Who makes them special? What is it? And so after understanding that further, what is DNA is actually this holographic storage system of information, and dependent on how it is combined or merged, these bloodlines of these that are in power do have activations and do have connections to these other interdimensional beings. So, in reality, I believe that the entire human race is really a hybrid race. We have been genetically modified from that origin point. And as we're merging and interconnecting with many galactic aspects of the universe, we are an expression of that. And it's through the code as we wake up that we begin to activate all of these interdimensional beings, like, for example, the ones that you saw that were not what we know of. I mean, there's millions, billions of races that we have the ability to access. So hybrid is using our genetic code. And the reason why the human genetic code is so incredibly powerful is because what we're experiencing in this dualistic polarity is the physical aspect and emotional aspect. And our ability to work through the emotion and through the perceived illusion of this physical matrix allows us to activate parts of ourselves. And we've kind of been going through this generationally, right? We have a lot of stuff that we're cycling through generationally. As this comes up, more and more we are recognizing now as we're at a point of evolution that we can understand that we are interdimensional. And I think that alongside the activation of consciousness is this advancement technologically.
Yes, of course.
So there's a timeline that's going into kind of like this combination of technology and consciousness that we're coming into a point of, and this is what we're going to be looking at in the next 5 years, is the merging of that. Now
Exactly.
where these hybrids take a role is that there are hybrids that are being created more towards that technological merging, and there's hybrids that are more, in a sense, organic or have this DNA that is activated on the higher dimensional planes. We see a lot of them incarnating in our dimensional timeline. So a lot of the kids that are being born, the new kids, a new wave of children in 2020 actually, that were the first wave of children that are going to begin to really push forward, and we're going to start seeing major jumps technologically because of them. And what are these hybrids? These are children that, normally we all come very open,
Yes.
from birth until the age of 7. But these are children that have already um, activated all of those barriers, taken down all of those barriers that limit their ability to be programmed by this system.
Right. I
They
call
transcend
them,
that.
I call them plug ready. They like literally coming like my niece. She came a plug ready, and from 2017 was the entry of the diamond ray children. So they had to come in to then start this in this incoming frequency of pure souls that have no karma. They come in at that vibration where they can completely bring this the gifts through completely, and it's so beautiful. They are completely just Christed. They're crystalline and even more, and some of them are carrying the plasma rays. It's so incredible to witness that. And um, and I loved everything you explained, and if we can get also into to helping people understand the ones that have already been incarnated, they came and there's been going through the lineages, and then there are the other ones that are on the ships. Many of them are on the ships that are getting ready to come. Many of them are waiting, and there is actually what people like. I never hear people talking about. There is interdimensional mating. Why couldn't everyone talk about this? I love. That's why I told you we're gonna have fun, so we can like talk about this, like bring it out in the open.
Totally. So important. Yes. It's, and so what creates these different kinds of hybrids is your genetic code, So I mean, a lot of us, we've unlocked a lot of this for years, like for centuries, lifetimes is what I'm actually talking about, lifetimes, which, some of us may think linear. It's not. It's all happening simultaneously at this time. So what that means is that when they take your genetic code, they take the ability to access all of those parts of you. And some of us have been light workers for a really long time. Some of us have been, in other Pleiadian groups or Arcturian groups before we came back into this planet, with the purpose of, experiencing polarity and shifting, helping to shift. Everyone that's born in this timeline right now that we're going through, I mean, you guys have really signed up for something huge, because this is like the birth of this quantum leap that we're taking in consciousness. So the hybrid, so as you were saying, the hybrids that are being born are terrestrial. They're being born in the terrestrial timeline, and I think also I want to add to the part that you were saying that they don't really come with karma. Just to clarify that, and I want what that really means is that they have the ability to manifest more so, because karma is cause and effect, and that's just the name, the laws of this three-dimensional plane that we live in, right? However, because they come in at a level of awareness and self-awareness and understanding of cause and effect, their ability to manifest and co-create with one another becomes heightened. Now, this is something that we can all reach, but these children are coming in with that ability already installed and aware. So our children are demonstrating that incredible. It's like things come to them so easy.
Like this.
Like my cousin is one of them. It's like he's incredibly intelligent. I mean, beyond his time, And it's so beautiful to see that. But our minds, of some of us that have been born at other times, sometimes we can't catch up to that because they're merging with this collective awareness of how everything is manifested.
Exactly.
And so the the terrestrial group, the second group is the ones that are on the craft, and these are hybridization crafts. They look a lot of times like little honeycombs, and I've heard this through several contactees. I have a support group um, from all around the world, and it's so amazing how they all kind of mention similar things that they see and experience. And even if they're in, one is in Africa, the other one's in, Australia, it's incredible. But what they are noticing is that they're like these honeycomb type craft that is basically a production ship of these hybridization, program. And so on the craft, there's going to be children. Some of these children are made to be on craft, and they just stay there. Some of them don't reach old age. Some of them stay at certain age ranges. They look like children, for the extent of their life, whatever that may be, different timelines, and some of them are the ones that are chosen to incarnate into the physical plane. Now, there's also interdimensional hybrids that are non of a physical form. They're actually non corporal. They are interdimensional beings that are here to experience that non physical aspect, which means they're not experiencing the emotional aspect of the
Right.
physical body. And a lot of these are utilized oftentimes for low vibrational. I've seen a lot of draconian technology around this, and I've seen a lot of also high. Now, one of the things that I want to make clear about some of these hybrid programs is that there's always an exchange occurring, between ourselves. If they come in and take our GNA code to make more children, are they intruding on our free will? And so, something I want to tell hybrids and also experiencers is that we make agreements at certain timelines in order to experience this part of us, the hybridization program, all of these things. We do agree to that. And whether the agreement that you made was at a point where you were not as aware, or it was a point where you were extremely high vibrationally aware, that's something that each and every one of us have the ability of tapping into that information so we understand. It's part of our evolution, and it's part of the integration of why you are here as your specific expression of consciousness.
I'm really glad
And
you mentioned that, Geraldine. Just one second, because there's this, lack of a better word, I really say this victim consciousness that, oh, this happened to me, like they took me, all of this, but it's never fully recognized. No, you were part of the experience. Like I remember one specific experience I had with me and my older son, who's 20 now, but some time ago, that um, I saw a being show up, and just it was me and my son, and as soon as I was just about to say, "Oh my gosh, we're about to go up," the being involved both of us and took us. So we were in the ship, and I was in one table, my son was another table, and we both were plugged in all of these plug cables, and it was so beautiful. And what I was seeing was they were repairing our body, so it was like this incredible experience. And then we were sent back, and the next day I felt kind of odd, yet felt incredible. So people don't realize these things have taken place because we have agreed to it, but they just don't remember it. And it has to come. That's why we opened this conversation. So that part that feels like it was done against my will is literally shift the consciousness. It was your active will as well. You just don't remember.
yeah, so we make agreements And this is why awareness this, I'm a huge advocate of activating your consciousness, your awareness. And awareness is something that we should practice every moment of our day, like right here, right now. Where's your body? You know, are you aware of the back of your body? Are you aware of the back of what's happening to your neck? Because what allows things to happen without your awareness is your lack of consciousness in those areas. So, you know, it's our responsibility because um, unfortunately, we're brought into a society where all of those things are severed and cut. And oftentimes we believe, you know, that things are very black and white and that, you know, we're not in control of these things. But we manifest our reality. I think that we can kind of cut that idea quickly by understanding the mechanics of creation. We are manifesting everything that we're experiencing by all the information in your subconscious mind. That's everything that you've experienced that creates programs, whether it was with your parents, whether it was in another lifetime. All of these things are encoded in the DNA and they surface as you evolve, as you experience your life. You know, they allow this information to come in and create responses to what you're experiencing. So be aware of that. If you know that, that means that you're in charge of rechecking, fact checking your own information. You know, what is it true? Is it true that you're a victim? You know, and I completely understand the victim ideas. You know, people do feel that because it's a very because they were told one thing all their lives, and now there's something else happening. So I completely relate to that. You know, and I feel for
Part
that.
of
But
deprogramming as well.
exactly,
Part
yeah.
of the deprogram on so many levels.
Exactly. And the wonderful thing about that is that once you understand that, you are in control. You're in control of understanding that if you change your belief systems from fear and into a love, there's two of these energies, right? Fear and if you choose love, which is not just an emotion, a romantic emotion, this is creative life force energy, right? If you tap into that love, you have the ability of manifesting now in resonance experiences that are higher.
Right.
I've also experienced with some of my, yeah,
Instantaneous,
honey,
Geraldine, right? Because it's truly instantaneous. Like, I really want to speak to this because when we're talking about the children, right? So we talked about some of these children, how quickly they're able. It's like the way I see it is that they're able to draw things from etheric plane in here, like left and right. And we call them master manifestor because they just can't because there's zero resistance in there. I have one,
exactly,
my
right.
17-year-old who's in here. He is one of those, but he was just like that. But he also came in with so much memory. Like when he was 5, when he began speaking, he started talking about the ships. Where were the crystals? Why am I his mother? I was his sister. Where's that? And he keep experiencing
Wow.
these ships, all these lights in our house, the amount of light that will come in. And he demanded the crystal. He has to sleep with the crystals again. And we had to go get all these crystals. And then they the communication. We had blue beings. We show up in our house, left and right. But at that time, he would appreciate it. Their father was top secret special agent in Department of Defense. So he's like wild place. But he was able to think of something, it would happen. Think of something, it would happen. We all like, what is he? You know, because and he's now 17, but the ones that are now are even like 50 times.
Exactly.
You
Yeah, you're right.
but
Yeah.
it's good to remind us also that true divine alchemy. I really want to bring it to that divine alchemy as
Hmm.
the creator force we already are. And that's what the galactics recognize this. There's no resistance in the consciousness. It is within the
Right.
human consciousness that has forgotten the true gift, which is exactly this.
Yeah, that's right. I love that. And so it's beautiful, like our kids. And something that I'm really excited about doing in the next coming year is creating some educational programs for parents, because there are hybrids that are coming into families that are totally not in alignment with any of this. They're not really there yet. And we got to support one another. We got to support, the kids that are feeling, they're so awake, they're so aware, they know all these things, and support that so it can continue that growth and development.
Very
But
much.
anyway, yeah, let's go back to the hybrids really quickly,
Yes.
just to end that. For anyone that is experiencing this, if you are a hybrid mother, the hybridization program itself, women do experience, having these incredible children. They are impregnated, and the child is taken out, and um, I don't want to make that sound like it's specifically, this fantasy-like experience. This can be very traumatic for a lot of people because, again, this is a very interesting experience that's happening. And so it's important to note that. It's important to note that for those. But what these hybrids are meant to do are, again, they're experiencing the polarity within this dimensional plane and with other dimensional planes, which means that there are hybrids that are high vibration and low vibration. So, in your experience, those of you that are hybrid parents, just note as a key, who are the people that you're interacting with. If you can recall, if you can try to remember the beings that you are connecting with, if you can try to remember, the kind of instruments that are being used in the space, what are you doing? Because all of this is important. Every single person, every experiencer is like a puzzle piece to this bigger picture that we know. And those of us that have the ability to tap into like awareness on a higher level, we can see this, but other people, they don't. They haven't tapped into that information. So it's important to know that it's safe to talk about it, to share their experiences.
And
Um,
I'd like to ask you to add just with something important you mentioned, like hybrid mothers. I mean, I feel like we need to talk about this because it's also not
okay.
but sometimes in their human experience, some of these hybrid mothers they don't know they're hybrid mothers, and let's say they have what's called miscarriage. I feel
hmm
like I want to speak of the
Good.
yeah.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure if you wanted to go there. I'm
I,
glad.
I really
Okay, good.
keep it open because I want this because it's not talked about. It brings so much frustration. Like let's talk about this
Perfect.
because it's here. So yeah, just add
So
this.
glad. Okay, good.
But that
Yeah, so
said that, and they're very heartbroken. But to bring the education, that's where we're starting.
perfect. Well, the hybridization program is like this. There is implantation of technology, it's biotechnology that's within the body. A lot of times it preps the body in order to hold whatever specimen is going to be inserted later. The next one is insemination, gestation, extraction, and presentation. Okay, so this is how most women, and we're talking with hundreds of women around the world, have experienced this process. And so usually it starts at very early age. Okay, my first experience was at the age of 5. It was an implantation in the back of the uterus, and later on at the age of 16, where I had the first insemination. And the gestation process, is oftentimes at that time I had no idea about sex or how that any of that happened. So I didn't understand really. But what happened is that I experienced a miscarriage, and these are technologically advanced and biologically advanced specimens, what they're inseminating into the body. In other words, usually the gestation process is sped up within the womb. So the longest time that I've held a specimen was for about 3 months. I know women that have held it up to 4. And then, they're full showing, everything is showing, and they're ready to have the child. And then from one day to the next, the child is gone. And there is no fetus, there's nothing left behind. They experience either, you know, what is it called? What did you say?
Yeah, I know it
A
is.
miscarriage. I'm so sorry. Either a miscarriage, or it's called a blighted ovum, which means that they once they look back at the uterus, they're not able to find the ovum there. So this through medical perspective, medical eyes, they say can happen because of hormones, because of stress, because of anxiety. But the problem is that a lot of women are going without answers, and they experience contact. So for example, they will have the dream that they're inseminated and then later on be pregnant. Then later on there will be an extraction where they have another experience where the child is being removed. And how this process happens is that the zygote is oftentimes taken out through the belly button, the umbilical, or it's taken out through the uterus. And so once it's taken out, they have these little womb like glass structures that it's like an incubation, right, system that they put them into. And what I've experienced is walls and walls and walls of these hybrid children, okay, like rows of walls, 12 feet tall, 24 feet long walls of these tanks of incubation. And experienced that many times. And it's been many of my experiencer mothers have also seen that, and it's very interesting to note the technology that's being used for that. Now, there's also a terrestrial hybridization program. I want to make sure that I touch on that because, yeah, yes. And so the terrestrial program is more involving the military, and it is more of a cloning kind of program. Again, once they have any of your genetic code, just a drop of it, they can create a whole copy of you. They can create a whole other specimen organism with that information. So, the thing is that on the higher picture, we're looking at these children. Later on, they're going to be presented. And not always you will remember that it's being presented, but a lot of times women end up having these emotional experiences where from one minute they're pregnant, next minute they're not, and then they are being presented these children as hybrids, like what happened to myself, and I know other people. Have you had a presentation, Hani?
Not that, no.
Okay,
No,
okay,
I have
just
not
out of
had that
curiosity.
presented. The only experience that I had was with the Materians, like that I got to see them. Oh, I had never known because I didn't even know who the Materians were. And then
Uh-huh,
I got to
yeah.
see, they got to show so many of them. I was like, wow, this is incredible. And they were like, the best I can say is like not a cell, but it's lack of a better word, it's like almost like cell, but the whole thing is violet there. Everything is violet. It's like a pink violet planet,
Mm-hmm.
and and inside of it was it's like a just like what it was in their head. Their head there was no brain or anything like that. It's see through. There's only like a vapor of color that comes when there is a communication, and that changes. So and that's how these um, these children were. That's how the like in their incubation, that's how they were like that.
Oh,
They had,
interesting.
yeah, really, really, really beautiful, just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I
Oh
was
yeah, their technology is incredible. Yeah.
incredible. I was just being
Yeah.
shown that,
Mm-hmm.
or was being, I guess, educated about it because I
Mm-hmm.
hadn't
Mm-hmm.
had that
I see.
experience before.
I see. Yeah, so what fascinates me and what really called me to do research on this topic is that I'm not the only one hearing this. I mean, there's nothing necessarily that makes me special to have this experience. We're talking about thousands of women and men
Yeah,
that experience the hybridization program. And at this point, the way I look at it is that we are a hybridized race. So these are the ones we're able to connect with, the ones that can remember what happened. But again, the technology is so advanced that they have the ability of locking those memories. I remember when I first saw the children, it was that moment of contact and connection with that child that I started to have these memories started to come back about holding the child, about being on the table, giving birth to the child. Not like we
kind of,
give birth, of
yeah,
course.
very different.
Yeah, and then being presented the child as a baby. And I was like, where were all these memories? I don't remember any of this happening, and it really causes kind of like a shock because you don't know what your part is in mothering the child. Like, was I an irresponsible mother that I was not there for them? There's a lot of
There's all of
emotion that
that
goes
that
into
goes
that.
there. Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Was
So,
it an area that, like, for example, others that have experience, they can contact you and just the support system that they need around that? And because I know a few individuals, that's why I had that. I was like, watch the show. she will be the one that you can contact.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a hybridmother.com that you guys can contact me for.
I'll put that.
And the idea is to research and to understand this. I am currently been working for the past year on trying to connect with doctors, gynecologists that have experienced people that have come to them with this problem, because we want to create support. The thing is that we need support on the earth realm too, as much as we can get support in the higher
Absolutely.
realms. We need to merge that, because I think the end result is a disassociation, and also people end up with PTSD because they're not able to integrate that experience, and it's very valid. Now, I want to really shift quickly to this pact of you know what's happening with these hybrids. Like, once they're born, so they're incubated, they're taken out, they're presented to you. Just a quick talk about the presentation. The
Yes.
presentation is very important, because any organism that is born, when it connects with its mother, there is a chemical reaction that happens within the body that literally changes the genetic code of the organism in order to support its own life, because it feels supported. It has that love. It's the incredible creative life force energy of love. And so the presentation is incredibly important. And this is why they go through all the trouble of later on showing you the child. There is a union, there's a love, there's a connection. The child is acknowledged, you are acknowledged, and then again you're separated, and the child is then taken on to carry out whatever agenda is under that specific group. Because these hybridization programs are hundreds and thousands of them, including the terrestrial program, right? The next thing is, now you've been presented, you know a lot of times women will experience this repetitively. I've had 24 hybrid children. I've
Wow.
had children that are very low interdimensional beings. I've had the children that are very high, the humanoid type.
Mhm.
And the interesting, when you see these children, some of them are, mixed. You can tell that it's a cocktail of DNA. They are reptilian, they are gray type children. Their eyes are magnificent. The pupil is like the size of our ocular socket, and the colors are fascinating. I mean, they look like the most beautiful aurora borealis. It's very different than a human, extremely complex and highly pigmented colors that are not just the colors that we have on Earth. Um, the way that they hold their bodies oftentimes are very fragile, very thin, very interesting beings. And some of them that are a little older, I had one that was about 23 years old, that was a reptilian mix, but very high vibration. And you can feel everything. Their communication is telepathic. You can sense everything. It's empathic. Um, and when you connect with them, when you interact with them, the incredible telepathic exchange that's happening, they recognize you. You recognize them. I recognized myself in this child, even if it was a blonde child with blue eyes, and was type of a gray structure to his body. Um, it's undeniable. Um, Now, the next step after this hybridization program is, when they are inserted, usually the higher vibration lineages are the ones that create into the incarnation cycle. Okay. It's my belief that when you're in the incarnation cycle, you're here to experience cause and effect. And so what they come here to do is to help pull this entire human race forward into that next
Yes.
evolutionary cycle.
Yes.
And little by little, we're seeding through older generation models into this higher vibrational model. Some of what's happening now on our planet, that's coming into this transhumanist agenda idea of where we want to merge with technology, is something that we're feeling this resistance right now between the organic and the non-organic. And that's something that we have to be aware that it's our choices, our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, and our connection to all this technology really disables and inhibits our ability to access higher dimensional codes within our DNA. So it's important to know to pull away from that in order to have these
So happy to
experiences.
mention that. Just softly you mentioned it for, you know,
Yeah.
so I'm so glad, because again, that's another thing that we will recognize it. So we know to pull away our frequency from it. But those who are unaware, they're completely unaware. So we need the education, but also have to accept it may not resonate completely. So, with some that are still not aware, and they have to go through that process, unfortunately.
Right, right.
And that's
Yes.
that part of that part that has to also go through the process and then later be dismantled. Because all
Yeah.
of it is being dismantled anyway.
You're right. Now, keep in mind, your genetic code is very sensitive. Um, Everything that you speak, your environment, what you eat, what you think, what you feel, changes the genetic code over time. So your entire environment is affecting you, okay? And so as we're evolving and as we're becoming aware, even the food that we're ingesting, like a lot of chemically created food, also inhibits the amount of vitamins that you're absorbing in the body and how you're integrating and healing this body. So this is why, we talk about organic food or homegrown food or energetically, increased food just by covering your food with golden light or white light to transmute all of that, setting the intention that whatever you eat is going to nourish this body. It's a step forward into conscious living that's on another level.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Everything like chemicals, medicine, all of these things change the genetic code. So, just be aware that, there are natural ways to help the body. And more importantly, the mind is the one that's in charge of this vessel that can bring it into this balance of health and vitality. Um, so just to end the hybrid thing, I don't know, do you want to talk about any other topics within
I
the
feel
hybrid or?
the hybrid part was perfect, like whatever you want to end with that, because that really was an area that I wanted to go to because you shared such wonderful wisdom and knowledge, and it's going to help people to go on their own research because that's what I'm all about. Like, don't just take what we're saying, go research yourself and dive into it. If you've been drawn to it, is because you need to become aware. It's important because it's part of you that's awakening. Go look
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah. Well, to close the topic, my personal ideology behind the hybridization program is to raise awareness of your free will. Okay, because um, I believe that everything that's in the highest dimension, the highest vibrational, and to me, what that means is closest to source.
Right.
There is no parasitic exchange within that realm. It's unnecessary because it is a whole. It understands itself as a whole. It acknowledges its body as your body, as a part of itself. So I don't feel necessarily that a lot of these extremely high vibrational exchanges are occurring there because I think it doesn't work, right? It's an intrusion on free will, this exchange of information. I do think that it's an organic expression of consciousness that moves, that is inevitable because we're constantly evolving. The lower, which is on this earth realm, which we're feeling physically, there is a parasitic exchange and you have a choice. So if you no longer want to participate in some of these programs, which sometimes do interfere with your life in very profound ways, you have the ability of stopping them by choosing not to be in resonance with that. And what that is no longer being in a state of fear of what's happening, of this unknown experience that's happening, creating really powerful energetic protection around you, embodying unconditional love for yourself and all things around you, and tapping into that unity consciousness of yourself will no longer make you a match to some of this parasitic exchange, whether it's terrestrial or either one of these hybrid programs that are occurring. I think that as we evolve as human beings, we're activating our DNA to the point where what that means is that we choosing free will so that we necessarily don't have to come back and incarnate into this incarnation cycle, but in fact choose to experience a higher vibrational experience, another higher dimension. And since we are intermeshed with all these dimensions at once, we can just choose where our focus and our attention goes in unifying the whole, which is what we're doing with our bodies, with ourselves, with our experiences, is to become that one whole again.
Oh, it's wonderful because that consciousness is co-creating its reality. And once we recognize it, once we become realized within its presence, then it is the gift that we can literally experience how this gift is, say, exchanged or materialized, or however numerous creative ways of it. And there's tremendous power in here where the direction they go. And
Hmm.
I really value and appreciate talks like this because it helps individuals. There already somewhere in there is already the awareness is there, but when we bring it into, say, this platform, it gives them permission to remember the consciousness and the awareness so that they too can literally take back, and it is the divine power. So it's so beautiful, and I just really
Yeah,
appreciate this so much on so many levels that you spoke of. Because
I love that. Yeah.
yeah. Anything else you want to share? Anything coming up for you that you like to share our audience? That's like events or any of that,
Yeah.
so they can follow up with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a retreat coming up on the 19th to the 22nd of February next month, and it's a 0 point retreat. And what we're doing is we are looking at mind, body, soul, every part of how to activate your genetic code so that you can allow yourself to come into this state of unity consciousness, state of non-judgment. And so we have yoga, meditation, sound bath, and these incredible lectures with my partner Zane Daniel, and Tina Trung from Bali, who's going to be teaching us this incredible yoga technique. And I'm really excited to share that with you guys. I also have several conferences coming up. There's the Higher Self Conference coming up in May, and then in September, the Wisdom Con, which will be coming up, as well as the Human Origins Conference, and several other little lectures that are happening before then. So please do join me. You can learn more about my workshops and everything I teach. My purpose is to teach you to understand your holographic DNA and activate the holographic DNA within the body so that you can reach the highest level.
Music to
Yeah.
my ears, my sister. But I'll
Thank
put
you.
all that information in the
Yeah.
in the Facebook, so that
Perfect.
way they know how to get in touch with you, and
Yeah.
again, and just blast this awareness. So
Yeah, it'd be so great. And yeah, you guys also, if you guys want to check out and learn more about the body, you can check out the YouTube channel, Geraldine Orozco. Just find me there.
wonderful,
So yeah,
wonderful.
thank you. Thank you so much, Honey.
Geraldine, I'm so grateful for your time and your energy and just the openness. I felt it's so important to open, really openly. Because what are we hiding? Because the minute we're hiding it, we are directing the energy to exactly that part that must be dismantled. Like, we need to bring it to the light, because otherwise it's feeding that part that, it still runs through the programs within, many systems, and within also our genetics. So we're dismantling. Every time we bring it to the light, we are dismantling, so it doesn't stay hidden. And some people get very uncomfortable with topics, and it's like, okay, go through the discomfort. Let's bring it to release that frequency, release that frequency. That's where I'm really focused. Is just this, you're uncomfortable, great. Let's go and even more.
Yes.
Release it, release it.
Agreed.
Constant
Yeah.
releasing. So
Yeah.
thank you so
Beautiful.
much again.
Thank
And so
you.
grateful to everybody. There were so many people, 40 people like on here, and I'm sure they had any. You want me to see if anybody had any question for you? Would you like that?
Yeah, I'd be so happy to answer any questions. No
Okay,
problem.
so give me 1 second. I mean, there's so many amazing. Let me see if anybody has any comments. Um, what we'll probably do is I'll probably go through it and then see if there's. I don't see any questions yet. Let me see towards the end if anybody has questions. It's just a lot of
Oh,
lots
there
of
are. Yeah, there's a
information.
lot of
There's
questions.
so much. There's so much. So one of my dear friends here realized there. She was with us in our meditation last night, and there's Lisa. So we'll go through what are the questions, and that way they can communicate with you. I love you, sister. Thank you so much. Thank you
Yeah.
for saying yes to this. Thank you for being of service to it. And each of us, one of the things that I always share, each of us that have been called to say yes to answer this call, you're bringing that information and light. The light is what carries the information to this cause and effect, because Earth is that cause and effect reality. To be able to shift it to the one consciousness, because that's what it is in, in, in the interdimensional planes anyway. So just to be
Hmm.
able to bring it back there, and and then we go on quite a bit of journey to get our systems ready to start bringing the material knowledge through. And it's continuously being, I don't know if you experience this, like I wake up in the morning, I've had experience in the evening, like in the dream state, and suddenly there's like an entire data of knowledge that I didn't have before. And I get to see the way it was, like it's suddenly like as if literally like virtual reality. I can pop it up here and there's all the information is there. Like
Hmm.
I don't know if you have this. I have like a screen to my right. There's a screen right above here, and there's one here. And suddenly, like the data is running. I don't know if you experience that.
No, usually if I have like these kinds of experiences, for me it's non-form. It's always like no form of any kind. It's very like downloads, images, and a lot of times I end up going to little nebula types things like these
Yes.
things,
Okay.
and I tap into information. But yeah, I mean, all that's
All different
incredible
people
that
have
you have.
different
Yeah,
experience.
there, it's everything. Doesn't even matter like however you download the information. What I do want to mention is have a journal. Feel like that's really helped me is that whenever the downloads come, because I wake up at different times in the night, and I think every different time of the night is like an activation of a certain part of me that's like becoming aware. Just write it down in your journal and keep it. And sometimes I'm so surprised when I a week later go back to that. It's like mind blowing, the kind of information that comes in. So keep a journal,
That's
and
absolutely.
yeah, I love that stuff.
Anything else you want to share before we sign this?
No, I mean, there's so much that we could talk about, but we
I mean,
can
if
do it
there's
again sometime.
if there's
So yeah,
if there's anything sitting really in your heart, you're like, no, honey, I need to bring it. Please do. Like, this is your space. It's your
thank you so much.
here.
Um, well, just talking about to end the hybrid talk, we are all hybrids, so don't focus too much on trying to get approval or acceptance from anything outside of you. You are the Alpha and the Omega. Everything begins and ends with you. And through your divine alchemy of transmuting fear into unconditional love, you become this superhuman, superpower. So please focus on that, especially at this time when there's so much distraction, so much. And don't focus necessarily on like definite definitions that people put on any of these topics. You need to experience. I feel like the only way people can learn things is through personal experience. Don't listen to what I'm experiencing. Your evolution is through what you know because experience is holographic. You understand it on so many different levels. It's emotional, physical, mental, and there's nothing that could ever teach you that way other than your own personal journeying into that. So just holding space for you. Love you guys so much. Thank you for being such amazing lights in this world. And when you hold this unconditional, powerful light within you, you have the ability of expanding, and collectively we bring in higher waves of that source energy into the earth, which will balance out all these experiences. So, be that light. And that's all. Just want to thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And I'm deeply grateful for your presence today,
Thank you.
for your presence, my dear sister.
Thank you, honey. Much love to you. Thank
Give me
you.
a second. Let me say goodbye to everyone on Facebook.